So today I'm going to be talking about the Windows Azure Logic app service, which is one of a very, very new feature that Microsoft have launched this year to do their integration platform in the cloud. So to get started, so the general Microsoft integration stack. So I've got a few of the different technologies here that are fairly well known, been around for quite a while. Going from left to right, so WCF and Web API. So there is building web services, can send messages to and from well-defined endpoints. So that's quite a well-known thing.
Speak a little bit louder, please, mate. I'm struggling to hear you.
Okay, so there's Windows Workflow Foundation as well. So that's often used to build sort of long-running processes that can make various things happen. Service bus, so that's something in Azure as well. It's like a messaging thing. So you can send messages to the service bus that stay on there and get picked up, used for distributed systems, making large scalable applications. There's also other types of service bus like end service bus, mass transit, that are commonly used in integration solutions. Then BizTalk servers, like the big daddy of Microsoft integration. So that can be used for anything really. So and BizTalk services are more a cloud-based thing, part of BizTalk. So Microsoft have moved into Azure. So the Azure Logic app service, this is a very new thing they launched in March this year. So what this is used for is sort of integrating applications together, so create these workflows. That's maybe start with triggering one application like a SQL database, or things like Salesforce, Facebook, Twitter integration all exists. So we have quite a lot of things like this where I work at Irwin Mitchell. They're using more legacy technology, something we built ourselves quite a few years ago. And for sort of business uses we have it for integrating our case management systems. We might have a workflow that monitors a SQL database. When a new record's created, say somebody wants a medical treatment, it will generate a message that goes out to an external provider's web service, so they can then take the claim on board at their end and process it. Sources, some other things we have going on, such as when companies send us secure files, they often send to an SFTP location, and we have workflows that automatically copy them onto one of our shared drives, or to send an email to various people who need to access those internally. But the Logic app service is a way of doing this within the cloud. So you use a web browser designer, sort of drag and drop the different components you want to integrate to each other. So it's a way of doing it without writing code in many ways. And it's also automatically deployed because it's in the cloud, good scalable architecture. So it's an interesting alternative to the previous integration platforms that already exist. So there's built-in connectors for 25 plus popular platforms, as will be shown later in the slides. And it's fully extensible, so you can create your own connectors to connect to any application you want to. Okay. Question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was curious about Irwin Mitchell being concerned about putting the legal data in the cloud. There was an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work for Irwin Mitchell.
Okay.
Well, there was always this issue about having the legal data in the cloud, whether it's part and parcel of the business model or what.
Mm-hmm. So
they were reluctant to embrace that at the time.
Indeed. So this isn't something we're actually using in production yet. Okay. So we've still got everything on premise as things stand.
Still on premise, cloud on premise.
Yeah. So I'm thinking from a developer perspective, I've had a look at how this Logic app service works. It offers quite a good developer experience, well, probably a better developer experience than the current applications we build like this. We've got our own workflow engine. To adapt it, you have to manually edit these XML files, and a lot of copying and pasting, messing around. A nice UI for this seems a lot easier and quicker to get things up and running with. So I think it's got potential, but Irwin Mitchell has obviously other obstacles to overcome. So the infrastructure need to learn how to support this new way of doing things. Testers need to get to grips with it as well. But so it's something I'm looking at, and if I can eventually persuade people at Irwin Mitchell that I think this could be the way to go forward. Yeah, probably a good point, but I think there's ways of doing with a hybrid cloud. The database is still on premise, and you can still connect to this and move some of the data that can be transferred across the internet, less confidential stuff, could work through this kind of platform. Okay, so what these logic apps are, I sort of tried to describe it already, sort of workflows that link applications together, and it's got this nice designer in the web browser that we'll look at in a moment. And it takes advantage of various BizTalk functionality is built into this as well. Some things like transforming XML, XSLTs, and various BizTalk validations as well. So sending XML between systems is a common integration pattern. It's got all the validations and transformations can be used with this platform.
Question. Yeah. Is it built on top of that then? Do you have to have BizTalk in order to use Logic app?
No, so you don't have to have BizTalk at all. All you need is an Azure subscription. You can just log into the portal, create new Logic app, and then you can actually get something up and running within 5 minutes, a really basic one, just going from one system to another. So,
all the connectors you mentioned that you're joining together,
yeah.
Are they all the web API services based on them? It's the same thing?
Yeah, so there's the API apps that are part of Azure nowadays, so those are what the connectors are.
Okay.
So there's a lot of ones there already, things like SharePoint, SQL Server, Salesforce, another one that we've got one for, all the social networks.
The API service, is that just a wrapper around a traditional web API project?
Yeah, so there's actually a new project type in Visual Studio called API app. So you can create one of these, and then that can then implement some interfaces to make it integrate whatever you want it to. Then you can upload that into the Azure portal and then use that in these apps where you want it to. So that's part of the extensibility. So
why are you sticking with XAML or XML instead of going with JSON, for example?
So XML is what we use at Irwin Mitchell and have done for a number of years. Indeed. So JSON is what's actually used. Okay, well, so yeah, for the Logic app, the basic concept's got a workflow, so a number of steps, 1, 2, 3. So basically triggers, we have a first step. So the workflow begins whenever the trigger occurs. So a trigger action could be, say, monitoring an email inbox. Say a new email arrives in the inbox, that will trigger this workflow to start moving. One other common is a SQL database, a new record arrives in a table, and that can be the trigger to start the whole workflow. Actions, so these are different things you can do. You can move a file somewhere, you can execute a stored procedure, you can send out a tweet. That's one of the things you can do with the app service. So you can link a number of these together to create all sorts of workflows. The connectors, so these are sort of API apps we briefly touched upon. These actually do all the triggers and actions. So move along. So this is what the designer looks like. So you go in the web browser to the Azure portal, say create new Logic app, and then you'll see a screen something like this. So along the right hand side, you've got all these different types of connectors you can bring in. You've got Microsoft SQL, Twilio's one for sending SMS text messages, Twitter and Yammer. So click on one, it appears on the screen like that. Then you get the designer, so various drop-down boxes or text boxes so you can configure each different workflow item you've got on there with various settings. So for the SQL one, there'd be a thing for putting the connection string into whichever database you want to be integrating with. Or if it's executing a stored procedure, type the name of it in. For the Twitter one, so what this one actually here does, so on the left-hand side we've got a recurring schedule. So once per hour, this app will start running. Then on the Twitter connector, it's just searching for any tweets with the word Microsoft Azure in it. And then it's going to move along to a Twilio connector. So whenever tweets are found with a Microsoft Azure text in, I'm going to be sending a text message to somewhere. So there's potential to maybe integrate that sort of a Twitter sentiment sort of thing. Because you could build your own API app that can analyse the content of a tweet, if it's positive or negative. Maybe send all negative tweets to your social media manager or someone like that, so they can act upon it. Probably one possible use of these Logic apps. That's what the design looks like. So yeah, the triggers, just the entry points. So I mentioned a few different scenarios here. Recurring schedules are fairly common one, I'd say. Very similar to a schedule job in SQL Server or a schedule task in Windows. And you can monitor email inboxes, SQL databases, Facebook timelines, and all the other things that have connectors for. For the actions, here are a few examples of the actions for a few of the different connectors. So if you want to use a file system connector, you might say get a file at various time, upload a file somewhere, delete a file. So there's the XPath one, if you're sending XML between web services, and to extract just part of the XML to then, well, transform and do something else with it. And then there's SQL for 365 for Twitter. So here is the list of all the built-in API connectors we've got. So there's a lot of different platforms there, all sort of social media and a few popular websites. There's Sugar CRM, QuickBooks, Salesforce, and a lot of the more commonly used ones for custom building your own stuff. We've got HTTP protocol, file system, FTP and SMTP. These are building custom-built solutions. So these are things that automatically come with the Logic App Service. So you can just go in your web browser, start dragging these things into your own application and building a workflow using them all. As I mentioned earlier, you can create your own connectors as well using this new Azure API app in Visual Studio. So it's still in preview because this whole concept was only launched in March this year. But it's there. So code view. So when you're dragging and dropping things around in the web browser, behind the scenes it's storing the workflow in a JSON format. So, and one of the current limitation in the designer is some of the more advanced features, like if you want to have different paths, say if I've extracted a value of one type, go to this go to this action next, otherwise go to this action next. The design doesn't fully support all these things yet because Microsoft haven't added the functionality. So sometimes you actually have to go into the JSON to add these really advanced features. So this is something that will hopefully be improved upon as we're moving on. I know Microsoft are developing this. Well, looked at their bit of a backlog on some of their forums. They've got a few big ideas for it, and improving the design and potentially bringing it to Visual Studio is one of them. So we've got some of the limitations of HTML5 as to like what we can actually do with it at the moment. So for this code view in the JSON, here's an example of what one of the JSON files looks like. It's not particularly nice. You can just about make some sense of it.
XML.
It is a little bit. I spent too many hours copying and pasting all this XML nonsense, mess a tag up. So it's quite bloated as well. That's one of the reasons I'm researching this, to try and get rid of XML one day. Yeah. And here's another thing. If you want to have parameters or variables, they need to go directly in the JSON. So it's not actually got the support for this in the designer yet. So for this example here, for the parameters, it's got this long array of different strings. And this is an action going to Twitter. It just tweets a random string from that array every few hours. So you can just about make up the structure. It goes parameters, actions, and there's triggers at the bottom. So it's sort of readable, but it's not really what you want to be doing as a developer. The nice user interface in the web browser is a lot better. So hopefully we're seeing less of this as this new idea develops. So that's the pricing of it. So for free, you can create 10 Logic apps on your account, but there's some limitations to that. I was having a play with it earlier. If you want to have something recurring, say once per minute, start this app, it doesn't let you. It has to be once per hour. What's the sort of minimum recurrence you can put on it? Then it goes up in price with having more apps on your account. You'll be able to do more with them. The currently got the most expensive is the premium. It's still in preview discount, so it'll probably go up in time. That's going to be £46 a month. You can build 20 Logic apps for that amount. So if you want to have like 40, it'll be like £92 a month. So the subscription fee will increase the more apps you use. Like the business I work for, I have over 100 of these workflows and I built XML format. So the cost could increase rapidly if you're building at that sort of scale using the cloud. Okay. And these are some of the areas for improvements. So it's still very much a work in progress and new technology. So these are some of the things I'd like to see, and I think some of them are on the way from what I've seen from Microsoft. So more advanced features in the designer, definitely something they're focusing on, and potentially bring it to Visual Studio as well. So remember, you can only do the development within the web browser, unless you really want to download one of the JSON files and edit it manually. And better source control support is something as well. So within the Azure portal, there's currently a version history tab you can look at when you're working with one of these, but it just says coming soon when you get there. So that's something it definitely needs working on. So if you deploy one of these things somewhere, then one of your developers in your team goes and makes a couple of tweaks to it, accidentally breaks something, makes a typo, and you want to roll back again, there's going to be no way of doing that. Unless you just save the JSON into a file on your own file system and put in source control that way. Just extra steps we could do without really. And improve logging as well. I had a quick look at how the logging works. I set one of these up and made it break. So you just have to click through the Azure portal, quite a few pages, and just get some big XML file, and somewhere hidden away in that is the error message. It's not always very clear. So I think that's definitely room for improvement as well. So yeah, so that's basic research we've done on the Azure Logic apps. So thank you all for listening.